Hello Namibia, welcome to yet another episode of the FLI Podcast. I'm Betty, your host, and today on Money Matters Namibia, we are joined by
Rachel Metzler, and I'm the administrator at the Microlenders Association of Namibia.
Thank you so much for coming, Ms. Metzler, and welcome to the FLI Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Access to credit plays an important role in expanding financial inclusion for both, or particularly for individuals, as well as small businesses who may not qualify. However, access to credit must be paired with consumer protection, ethical lending practices, as well as responsible borrowing behavior. So in this episode, we explore microfinance, regulation, interest transparency, over-indebtedness, and financial discipline. Ms. Metzler, thank you so much for coming once again, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you very much.
What is the mandate of Microlenders Association?
The Microlenders Association is a voluntary organization that was established in 1998 to assist microlenders. What we do is we provide education to microlenders. Now, our members are microlenders that are registered with NAMFISA. So for you to be able to become a member of our association, the Microlenders Association of Namibia, you must first be registered with NAMFISA. And NAMFISA is short for Namibia Financial Institutions Regulatory Authority, and they are the overarching regulator for the microlending sector. The short name for our organization is the MELA. So I think just for the purpose of this interview, I will then just refer to ourselves as the MELA. The MELA then also drives change. It means that whenever new legislation is introduced by the regulator NAMFISA, then the MELA will then go through the regulations, through the standards, through the legislation. So the MELA drives change. That means that whenever new legislation is introduced by NAMFISA, then we would then scrutinize the legislation on behalf of our members. And if there's anything that we are not happy with, then we will then communicate that back to the regulator. We are also having our dedicated legal counsel. So if there's anything that we need clarity on, then we immediately refer it back to our lawyers. Important to note that our members must adhere to the constitution of the MELA. We also have a code of conduct, and in terms of that code of conduct, they must do their business in an ethical manner. So we are very, very strict in terms of compliance. In terms of the Microlending Act, all microlenders must belong to a microlenders representative body. So we are a representative body that was registered by the regulator, by NAMFISA. Our membership, however, is voluntary. Microlenders must see the need to register with us because they must see that there's a benefit emanating from membership to the MELA. The business of the MELA is overseen by a management committee, and the management committee is elected by our members at our annual general meeting.
Ms. Metzler, how does microfinance contribute to economic development?
So microfinance specifically make financing available to the lower income earners in Namibia, especially people that do not have access to formal banking channels. What microfinance do is to make the financing available, and people can then do business in Namibia. They pay with the money that they receive from us. They pay for education for their school children, and they can even get involved in activities of a productive nature. So access to financing also reduce poverty and vulnerabilities, and microfinance enable households to smooth consumption during difficult times. It avoid predatory lending practices, and it also allow people that avails of the money to invest in income generating projects.
Now, what standards ensure ethical lending and consumer protection?
So NAMFISA has introduced standards that all microlenders must adhere to. This include affordability calculations. So if you as a borrower approach a microlender for a loan, then there's certain steps that they must follow to see whether you qualify for the loan. Also, loan agreements that are used by borrowers, that loan agreements must be vetted by NAMFISA. So NAMFISA look at the terms and the conditions of the loan agreement to see whether it's fair. So that is also one of the protection measures. And very important to note is that a microlender is obliged to explain the terms and the conditions of the loan agreement to the borrower. So the microlenders must also explain the terms and the conditions of the loan to the borrower in their local vernacular, so that we can be sure that they understand what they are getting into. Also, NAMFISA requires microlenders to subscribe to a credit bureau. Now, a credit bureau is credit bureaus such as TransUnion and CompuScan, that is now called Credit Info. So the minute that you give a loan as a microlender, that loan must be loaded onto that credit bureau. So if you as the borrower then go to a second or third lender and they go onto the bureau, then they can immediately see what is your exposure, and they will then be able to make an informed decision as to whether, having regard to all other loans that you have, whether you will still be able to qualify and to afford this new loan.
Okay, so as a potential borrower, a responsible potential borrower, I want to know, how should borrowers evaluate interest rates and repayment terms before signing agreements?
What a borrower must do is they must first know what are the applicable and allowable interest rates. Now, currently in Namibia, if you take a microloan, then the microlender, they can charge 30% on that loan. So if we take an example of a loan of 3,000 Namibia dollars, let's take an example, you take 3,000 Namibia dollars, if they add 30%, then the amount that you need to repay would be the capital of 3,000 plus in the interest of $900. So you now owe the microlender 3,900 Namibia dollars. If you then repay that loan over a period of 1 month, you must repay $3,900. If you repay it over 2 months, then it's 3,900 divided by 2. And then you pay that amount in 2 installments. If you take it over a 3-month period, then you pay it in 3 installments. So it's important for borrowers to be aware that if you negotiate with a microlender from the beginning that I want a loan of this particular amount over, say, a 3 or a 4 or 5 month period, then the microlender can only charge that 30% once off. They cannot charge you 30% per month. So if you now owe them $3,900, whether you repay it over 1 month or 2 months or 3 months or up to 5 months, the amount of 3,900 will never change. They will just divide it through the number of months to see what is the installment payable. So that is very important for borrowers to know what is the interest rate regime in Namibia. Secondly, the borrowers also have a responsibility to see whether they afford the loan, because as the borrower, you know that at the end of the month, this is X amount that I take home. So they must also be able to make a calculation as to whether they'll be able to repay that loan if they take the loan, whether they will be able to repay the installment on a monthly basis.
What warning signs indicate that somebody is entering a debt cycle?
So a debt cycle is also referred to as a debt trap, and that is when you find it increasingly difficult to service all your debts. Some of the warning signs are that you take out new debt in order to service old debt. So now you're already owing a microlender a certain amount, then you need to go to a second microlender to get a new loan, and with that new loan you need to repay the older loan. So that is one of the signs. Also the fact that you increasingly depend more and more on short-term loans in terms of servicing all your debts. And there's also situations where people do not service their debt on a monthly basis. They skip the debt. Sometimes they pay, other times they do not pay. So all of those are signs that the person is going into a debt cycle. Also another red flag is the fact that people miss payments. They are supposed to do the payments on a regular basis. They miss the payment and they do not communicate with either the microlender or with any other service provider to explain what are their financial difficulties. There's also other red flags that is more emotional, is that if you know that you are having financial problems, you are falling into a debt cycle, then it's that anxiety of always checking your bank balance to see what is my balance, is the money in my balance enough to service the remainder of the debt. So it's having an emotional toll on the borrower as well. Another warning sign is the fact that more of 30 or 40% of your income goes towards servicing a debt. So that means that there's very little left, to pay for your normal monthly expenses. So those are typically the red flags.
Why is financial literacy so critical for sustainable growth? If people are financially literate, then they'll be able to make use of sustainable finance. That means that they will know what to look for. They will know what are the right questions to ask if they go to a microlender. They will know how to calculate the cost of credit. They will, for example, know that once I take a loan, they cannot charge me more than 30% on the loan. So that is only possible if you are financially literate. Financial literacy also helps people to understand that they cannot borrow loans in infinity. So there must be a way where you can actually repay the loan and take a breather, and even try to find a balance between when do you take the loan. So it's not a perpetual issue of taking a loan every single month. So financial literacy also enables people to draw up budgets, to see exactly what is the level of their expenses per month, and to make fair and reasonable decisions as far as loans are concerned. A financial literate person also don't go to the first microlender. They will go to a number of microlenders and then ask the microlender to give them a quote in terms of, this is the amount that I require, what is the interest that you charge, and what is the tenure of the loan, for over which period can I take the loan. So once they have their different quotations, then they can sit down as a financial literate person. They can then do a comparison to see which of the microlenders can give them the best buck for their money. It also ensures productive borrowing, that you don't only use the money for short-term needs, but that you use the money for productive purposes. And productive purposes is that you invest the money in something that will provide a sustainable flow of income. That is also what we want for the borrowers. And it also, if you are financial literate, then you will know that you must have an emergency savings kitty available. And they say that is anything between 2 or 3 months of your monthly salary must actually be in the emergency savings kitty, that if something happens or you lose your job, then at least that money is available. So that is all the responsible things that somebody will do that is financially literate. Now, how is the sector regulated to maintain fairness?
So, as I said previously, microlenders are registered with a regulator, that is NAMFISA. And the minute that you are registered with NAMFISA, then you are subject to certain rules. You must adhere to the provisions of the Microlending Act and all the regulations and standards that are issued in terms of the Act. NAMFISA also ensure that they do what they refer to as off-site inspections, where the microlenders must send them information on a periodic basis. They then go through the information, and if there's any red flags, then they can make contact with the microlender to ask for clarification. NAMFISA also go out for on-site inspections, where the inspectors physically physically go out to the premises of the microlenders, and they go through the books, they go through the loan agreements, they make the calculations to see whether the borrower did in fact afford the loan that was granted by the microlender. So all their checks and balances are being done on site and also through the off-site surveillance of NAMFISA.
How does the association support the FLI or the Financial Literacy Initiative or any other financial education initiative here in Namibia?
So what we do is we are currently a member of the Financial Literacy Initiative of FLI, and as part of our membership we recently also contributed extensively. There was a review of the national policy on financial education, and as the MLA we sat with the group of stakeholders together with FLI, and we worked through that policy, that national policy. We are of the view that once we have that national policy on financial education in place, then we will embed financial literacy in the curriculum at school level, primary school, secondary school, even on tertiary level. And we are positive that if we can have that embedded in the school curricula, our students will be more financial savvy and they will be able to make better financial decisions in future.
How is technology changing borrowing behavior?
Technical innovation and digital transformation has changed the face of the industry, because now borrowers have the ability to apply for funding online.
Yeah.
So access to credit is so much faster. It's literally at the click of a button. So that is a good thing in my view, because we know that especially people in the rural areas, they might have access to Wi-Fi and they're able to access the facility on the cell phone, and that will actually be infinitely better than them traveling 100 or 200 or 300 kilometers to the nearest microlender. So that is definitely a good thing, but there's also disadvantages, because now it is as if access to credit is becoming too easy, because you actually have access to credit at the click of a button. And the thing that we are afraid of is that people might become reckless in their spending habits, because you know that you can access the money very fast and very quickly. So there is a responsibility on both the borrowers and the lenders to, even if they do make use of technology to facilitate the borrowing of money, that they still remain vigilant, that they still make the necessary calculations to see the borrowers do in fact qualify for the amount before they disperse the fund, because we know that with technological advancement there's also unintended consequences, because now we break down that barrier and we give access to financing to our people, but then it can be at the peril of the people if it's not being done responsibly.
What reforms or improvements are needed to strengthen responsible credit culture? We are currently in the process as Namibia to introduce what we refer to as the Consumer Credit Bill. And the Consumer Credit Bill will then also harmonize different pieces of legislation. In terms of the Consumer Credit Bill, the Microlending Act will also be repealed, and there will then be a better enforcement of regulations in terms of the Consumer Credit Bill, and there will be specific actions that will be taken if microlenders or any service provider, if they do not do their business in accordance with the Consumer Credit Bill. What we should also do in future is that there must be targeted financial education programs to teach people about their rights, and also for them to be aware of their responsibilities as far as microfinance and microlending is concerned. Very important also is that people make sure that they can afford funding before they make use of funding, and also that they know what are the terms and the
conditions of any loan agreement. They must be able to compare different microlenders with each other before they make a decision, and there must be very strict enforcement actions that if anyone is contravening the rules and regulation, there must be enforcement action that should be taken by the regulator.
What are some of the frequently asked questions within the MLA? How does one know that a lender is legitimate?
One of the things that a borrower must always do is to ask the microlender before they even take the loan, are you registered with NAMFISA? They will also be able to see whether the lender is registered, because NAMFISA issue a registration certificate, and according to the Microlending Act, that registration certificate must be prominently displayed. So you will be able to see it prominently displayed in the microlending office. A second issue that is also a frequently asked question is borrowers normally want to know what is the interest rate payable. We've discussed today, and I've emphasized that it's 30%. That is the allowable interest rate. So if you do come across a microlender that charge you more than 30%, then obviously it's something that you must report to NAMFISA. The other question is that what do I do if a microlender has treated me unfairly or they have overcharged me? The answer is that they must approach, the borrowers must approach the complaints department of NAMFISA. NAMFISA has a dedicated complaints department, so you approach the complaints department and you lodge that complaint, and NAMFISA will then investigate the complaint. Another question is whether a borrower can come and, not a borrower, a lender can come and harass me at work because of money that is outstanding. They may not do that. They cannot come and arrest you at office. They can also not force you to sign blank documents. We have found in the past, especially with the illegal lenders, that they let the people sign blank documents, and then after the person has signed, then they populate the form, so you do not even know what is being populated. So very important for our borrowers not to sign any blank document. Make sure that all the empty spaces has been completed before you sign it. Also, a lender cannot take possession of your personal property. As a microlender and you take a loan from somebody, they cannot insist on you giving something as security for that loan. It's illegal. They cannot say that you must lodge a physical item with them, or they cannot come to your house and take possession of your furniture or your bed or your fridge. So that is also important for borrowers to know, that they cannot lay hands on your property in exchange for the loan.
Well, that was it from us. Thank you so much for joining. And Ms. Metzler, thank you for coming to the FLI Podcast. We highly appreciate your insightful discussion.
Thank you very much. And once again, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Remember to stay literate and borrow responsibly, okay? Now, if you have any more questions, do leave them down in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and follow us on all our social media platforms. That is the Financial Literacy Initiative Namibia on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok, as well as LinkedIn. Ms. Metzler, do we have any socials from the MLA?
At this stage, we only have the MLA website at www.mla-nam.com. So please visit our website for all details relating to our business and how we can support you as a borrower and potential members being the microlenders. Thank you.
Awesome. Until next time, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.